Hi everyone, my name is Juho Salminen, and first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor to get this kind of invitation, and I hope you like, or at least have some good critique for the stuff I'm going to present. This is pretty much work in progress, so at this point I can still make lots of changes to what I'm trying to do, or even drop it completely, and not waste more time on it, depending on what you think. But the topic today is, the working title for this stuff is SuperCrowdSource Me. And my background is in industrial engineering and management, and I did my master's on innovation management. And then I also got interested in collective intelligence after reading an article on National Geographic about how honeybees select the nest sites. That sort of got me interested in thinking about whether these two things could be combined. So innovation management or innovation processes and collective intelligence, whatever it happens to be. And there's like in this slide a basic assumption with which I started this work I'm presenting. So there's basic idea is that if you take innovation process, combine it with crowdsourcing, you are familiar with the term? Crowdsourcing? So outsourcing some of the tasks that are usually done by an organization to undefined crowd on the internet, usually on the internet. So the idea was that if you take innovation process, and combine it with crowdsourcing, you get something like collective intelligence. And there's quite a lot of talk about this in papers talking about crowdsourcing, or people quite often state that when you crowdsource, you can use the collective intelligence of the large crowds. And a skeptic in me says, oh really? Is it really so? Can we really find any evidence on this claim that crowdsourcing supports users or benefits from collective intelligence, whatever it may be? So, for this study, I got the inspiration from basically three sources. Have you seen the movie SuperCrowdSource Me?
I've heard about it.
Well, yeah, the basic idea was there was this guy who decided to do some research on what are the health benefits of eating only McDonald's food, and he spent 30 days eating only at McDonald's. And on day 15, the doctors told him to stop because his liver was going to explode or something, but he went all the way through. Then there was this another guy, a comedian, who first spent 30 days without marijuana, and then 30 days in a row using marijuana every day. And made a documentary about that. And finally, this guy, Matt Katz, he's been doing these 30-day challenges, like 30 days without candy, 30 days taking one picture every day, these kind of things. And he says that if you do something for 30 days, that's something that's usually enough to make it a habit if it's going to stick. So I thought maybe I could use the same approach with crowdsourcing and spend 30 days on various crowdsourcing sites and see how it works. I was thinking that 30 days might be enough to give me a good understanding of what's going on the site, so I could sort of understand what's going on in there and what is the experience from the user's point of view. I had basically three research questions. What is collective intelligence on crowdsourcing sites, and if there is some? How does it emerge there? And because I found these two questions quite difficult and challenging and a bit risky, taking into account how much time I spent on those sites. I also have a backup question: how innovations are created on crowdsourcing sites. So if the first two fail completely, I can at least say something about the third. Yeah, maybe a bit of theory. So there is at least I'm focusing only on crowdsourcing sites that deal with innovation or are aimed at creating innovations. So maybe it's a good idea to say something about what I mean by innovation. And for the last year, this has been my favorite definition of innovation. like an innovation is some sort of combination of problem and a solution. Often there's when people talk about innovations, it's about invention, but the really major part, which is often neglected, is to have some real problem or real need for which you have the solution. This actually is quite close to how design is defined. Design is conceiving and giving form to artifacts that solve problems. So design is actually quite close to creating innovations. And there's different descriptions of innovation process, and they are all pretty close to this one here, which describes how design is made or how artifacts are created that solve problems. First, of course, this is like a simplified version, and actual designers who create innovations, they usually jump between all the phases all throughout the whole process. But in general, first you sense some sort of gap between the state you are in at the moment, or the user is in, and the desired state. Then you go on figuring out what exactly is the problem, try to define it in different ways. So you have something for which you are trying to figure out a solution. Then you explore what kind of alternative solutions there might be, and finally, through some testing and prototyping, you select one which you are going to pursue. And then so that was about the innovation. So innovation is a combination of problem and solution, and there's this typical process that is followed when innovations are created. And for the collective intelligence, this is basically from the literature review. Some of you may have seen, which I think was the reason I got this invitation. I presented this in a conference on collective intelligence last spring, and I just did a little literature review on what other people have written about collective intelligence. And the main conclusion was that there seems to be 3 levels. Micro level, which is mostly about human beings and their characteristics. Then a level of emergence, which is about these complex adaptive systems, swarm intelligence pretty much. And then micro level, which is more like a statistical phenomenon. If you look at the topics that seem to be covered in each of the levels, this micro level is mostly about psychology, or what are like the enabling features of human beings that make it possible for some collective behavior to emerge. And there's people are discussing things like motivation, trust, intelligence of the individuals, and like how human beings are social animals, and there's being immersed in a social network is a typical condition for human beings. And there was also this one really interesting study done in MIT. They had 700 participants, and found out that when you have a group solving different problems, there seems to be something like a collective intelligence factor in them, and about that a bit more later. Then if you zoom out to the other end, at the macro level of this phenomenon, collective intelligence, it might be that, at least in the papers I reviewed, it seems like the phenomenon is more like statistical or probabilistic. So people talk about wisdom of crowds effect, or decision making, how biases change things. And so the output of the system might be something related to statistics or probabilities. And in between is this, for lack of a better name, I call it level of emergence, which is about how these micro-level interactions translate to this statistical phenomenon. And here you have things like self-organization, swarm intelligence, complex adaptive systems, emergence of something that is more than a sum of the parts, these kind of things. And for this that was a sort of theoretical background, so I tried to simplify it a bit to get a theoretical framework for my study. And this was a really quick and dirty model, like my guess on what I might see if I'm to find collective intelligence, what might it look like, based on my own assumptions. So there is some sort of agent which follows rules, which are partly created by the basic human capabilities and human psychology, and partly created by environmental constraints. Then there's information going to the system through the agent, which performs some activities which then change the environment, or make changes to distributed memory, which again gives feedback to an agent or a different agent, which then performs different activities, and so on and so on. And out of this complex system, there emerges some sort of output. And I thought that if I could find out, if I go to a crowdsourcing site and find information on all these aspects, I should have some sort of picture of what kind of collective intelligence there might be. My approach, I'd like to do a multiple case study. So far, the original idea was that I had a bit of time in the autumn, so I thought I would spend 30 days, select 10 crowdsourcing sites and spend some time on each of them every day for 30 days. So in the end of the month, I would have 10 cases and everything would be fine and nice and dandy. But it turned out it's actually not that easy. It's way more work than I thought doing this ethnography, and now it's been something like 4 or 5 months. I have one case. So it's quite a lot of work. So the approach is, I still want to do a multiple case study, but it's at this point it's only one case. And I'm doing it using ethnography, so I participate on the sites as a normal participant and collect data at the same time. And the idea is to analyze the data, what I get, qualitatively. And so far I've only spent time on OpenIDEA, but here's some other examples that I would like to look at. Quirky is they design products there. Then Ideas project is crowdsourcing site by Nokia, and Threadless is this famous t-shirt company, and there are many others. I haven't really thought that much which exactly would I spend time on. Yeah, so at this point I've done a pilot study. I consider it still a pilot, so...
But can you explain a little bit more what kind of problems these different crowdsourcing sites approach?
For these ones, OpenIDEA is about social or environmental innovations. More on that a bit later. Kirky is a website where they collaboratively design products, so anyone can make a suggestion, like I would like to have this kind of product and it would solve this problem. They have a simple form, and then other people can vote on which ones they like. And there's, I'm not really familiar with that site yet, but it's at the moment it's actually my favorite, because they have lots of professional designers. They have really well thought out process, it seems, and they use. It seems like they are using the crowd only for tasks that are simple to learn and easy to do. Like how much would you? They have a game where you can say how much would you pay for different products and this kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, usually in collective intelligence it's selecting alternatives, while creating the alternatives, that's more interesting part of the innovation.
Yeah.
So that's still more done individually, or
sorry?
That's done more individually.
Yeah, I would say so. And then other things that the crowd can do is create success slogans or product names or these kind of things. So they seem to be doing only simple tasks, but in OpenIDEA they usually tackle big, hairy, complex problems. Ideas project, I don't know that much about it yet. I haven't looked at it really, but it's they made a new version some time ago, but the previous one was about just collecting ideas. it seemed. And Threadless, they make T-shirts. They don't do the product design by themselves, so people can send a suggestion about what kind of T-shirt design they would like, or draw the T-shirt, and then other people can vote on it, and then they select a couple of T-shirts every week to produce, and usually they sell out everything they make.
But that's basically the graphical design of the T-shirts.
Yeah, that's what they do.
So it's in a sense an artistic problem that they're solving.
Yeah. So yeah, for this, this is how the site looks like. There's this top bar tells which phase they are in at the moment. Well, we'll look at the phases soon. There's always some sort of sponsor that sponsors a challenge. So they always have these challenges. For example, how can we manage e-waste and to safeguard human health? Some external sponsor pays to run this challenge, and then the crowd participates, creates solutions, and it's supposed to be lots of collaboration. They emphasize that in every term. And actually, yeah, not yet. Yeah, here we have. Here it's an evaluation phase where people can give evaluation on different criteria. How much do they like the concepts that people have come up with, and that's just before they decide who wins. Yeah, what else should I decide? Yeah, at this first pilot on OpenIDEA was, I consider it like a pilot study, as I said, and it was mostly about, I wanted to test whether this is doable at all. How does the data collection work? How can I analyze it and try to develop some ways to analyze the data and see if there's something that could be called intelligence on the site. And yeah, the data collection was done so that I was participating on a site as a user would. But then if I saw something interesting, or if I read, for example, a concept, I was reading a concept, I usually took a clip of it using Evernote. I don't know if you know this software. Evernote. It's like it's like a notebook software, but it has this handy feature where you can take like little clips of the websites. Yeah. And,
it's easy because you can join textual notes, you can write,
yeah.
you can record, put a clipboard or graphic, whatever thing to the text.
Yeah,
all in one place.
And it was really nice because it has this clipping button in the browser, so it doesn't really interfere with what you are doing on the site. So you just come up with something. Okay, I want to take this. You just click one button and it goes automatically, and then it doesn't bother you that much. Then I had a bit of a difficulty. I still had to copy all the notes that I had clipped to Word documents, so I could put them on this deduce qualitative data analysis program where I a bit of analysis there. But yeah, in the end I had 422 web clips. I had 51 diary entries. I was keeping a diary at the same time when I was on the site, so documenting like what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, what were my thoughts about the site. So yeah, in the end, 51 days on the site, or visited the site on 51 different days. And then I collected a bit of statistics on 3 challenges.
What is this deduce?
It's a qualitative analysis software. So yeah, I don't have a net connection, so I cannot really show it. But it's what are the similar ones? NVIDIA, I think, is another one. Basically, you can yeah, maybe I can show it. Let's see.
There is a Wi-Fi here if you want. There is a password that's hidden there.
Okay, that's it.
Well,
This is
Well,
wow.
so for you, atom for you, A. Yes.
One for you, one for you,
seems like it's. Well, actually, it seems like I'm connected to something.
No, I
Are
don't
you
think
sure you're
I don't
connected?
think you are connected because your Dropbox is not active.
Yeah, it was 8.
Yes, this one.
Atom, yeah. Atom for you, atom for you,
Yeah.
A.
Have to be there on that side of the camera.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
And it complains because I forgot to pay.
That's -25.
Yeah, anyway, basically the idea is that you can put text documents and then you can mark small passages there, like for example, if you have something that talks about, which is clearly about, for example, let's say feedback, then you can mark this is about feedback, this is about feedback, and if you do that I did it to all the 400 documents.
You have to pay.
It doesn't let me in. And then when you are, if you have a big pile of documents, and so you can sort of like mark there where is in each document is what is discussed in where, and then you can look at with the tag feedback and get all the passages or parts of the documents where people talk about feedback. So that's
So
actually.
it learns from the things you marked to look for other things that are also.
No, it's not that smart. I have to do it by hand. So I read the documents and then basically like underline. Like this is about feedback. This is about, let's say, interaction. This is about idea generation, these kind of things, and I can mark them, and then I can, or here's about the analysis, so maybe this explains. So in those, I made these codes, like, this is about the innovation process, this is about rules, this is about what kind of tasks people have to do, and then for these 4 topics, then I took out all the passages that talked about rules of the site and made it to a Word document then.
Why do you need that deduce then?
Sorry?
Why do you need that costly software then to do that? If you just take it out yourself, if you mark it yourself?
Well, it's different. What I put in is the raw web clippings from the website. And then what I take out is only the parts that discuss about rules. So I can, from 400...
Can't you copy that by hand?
Well, it's... yeah, I could copy, but then I would have to do it separately for all the things. Now I can kind of mark, because one
mark them first and then collect them all, you mean?
Sorry?
Mark them first and then collect them all in one document.
Yeah. Do I have something more?
I mean, I'm interested in software for qualitative analysis, but I want to understand just how useful it is.
Well, it's quite a lot of work, so it's a shame that I forgot to pay it. So at the moment. Well, maybe after the lecture I can make the payment and I can show the details if you are interested. But basically I use the deduce to separate the interesting parts from this big pile of text. So there was 400 documents, many of them many pages. So I got out of that big pile only the parts that discussed about rules. Then in different only the parts that discussed about the tasks that users have to do on the page. Then only the parts that discussed about feedback. And then I read only. Then I got only data on the feedback, how the feedback works on the site, for example. Then I went through that, underlined the interesting parts, and used my favorite tool, post-it notes, to organize that. So this way I would have a well, yeah, actually I have a couple of prints. So I try to keep the originality of the text, so or keep it as original as possible, or as faithful to the stuff that I had seen on the site. So then I turned this, made this sort of a case description based on this things that I had seen. So it's like I tried to describe what is going on this website as accurately as I possibly could. So I would have some sort of like a easy to use story of how this web page works, to which I could can come back to when I try to look if there's something that I could call collective intelligence. And this was sort of like an end product of this data analysis at this point. So after all this work, I got this story of how open idea site works in my experience. And if you look at the site, they have this is the bar that's on the top of the page, almost every page, which describes the process, how it goes. First there is the inspiration phase, where it's supposed to collect, people are supposed to collect examples of things that work that are somehow related to the challenge they are trying to tackle. Then people make concepts, they can upload, or a bit like a like put on Facebook. So if they like some concepts, then usually something like 20 concepts go to the second round, where people have some time to refine the concepts. And there's evaluation by the users, and people who are running the site decide the winners, and then the site doesn't really concentrate on realization. I tried to look for it, but I'm not exactly sure what they do with the final concepts. And I also have a sample here. From one challenge they made this report. That should give some sort of idea what kind of concepts there are coming out of this site. But when you spend, I think this is where I really, it was valuable to spend so much time on the website, because on the first look, this is how you understand this is how they describe the process on the site. But when you look at a bit closer, it's much more complicated than that. First, there is a challenge brief created by the organization or people who are running this site with the challenge sponsor. They post it to a website. Then people who are participating on the site have to learn about what is this problem about, and then they post some inspirations or examples of working solutions. Then there will be something they call synthesis meeting, done, which is only for the facilitators of the site, where they read through the inspirations and make challenge teams and some design constraints for the concepting phase. Then, in concepting phase, most of the action happens outside the site. So people can individually create the concepts, or what is more encouraged on the site is people should organize some sort of workshops or brainstorming sessions with the friends. They also even...
But the site does not support that, those workshops, they have to do it themselves.
No, they provide toolkits, like this is an instructions kit for this challenge. This is how you could organize a brainstorming session. These are the questions you should consider there. And here's a form you can use to collect the ideas. And then at the same time, sometimes they run this organizing, the people who are running this workshop, they also organize some workshops with the sponsor of the challenge. Then it moves on to the applause phase, where people can show their appreciation to the concepts, after which people from the organization, again, they make a selection with the sponsor, like which concepts are the best. And those usually 20 concepts go on to the refinement. And then in the refinement phase, people are supposed to collaborate and make some visualizations, maybe prototype a bit, develop business models. There again, there is sometimes workshops organized by these people who run this website to try to build a prototype of some of the concepts. Then there is an evaluation, which is like a simple form with something like usually five different questions with 3 aspects for each, and you can choose how much you like on all of these dimensions of each of the 20 concepts. And
so
then
it's a more refined version of the applause.
Sorry?
It's a more refined
Yeah.
version of the applause.
Yeah. But actually, counterintuitively, I found the applause is actually more useful than the evaluation, because I don't remember what is quite late in the case description.
One of the problems if you use multiple criteria is that you don't know how the criteria relate one to the other.
Yeah,
so you can't just add them together. If something scores well on certain criteria, that it is really a good thing. There may be other criteria that are not mentioned that are so bad that it's excluded.
And when I was doing an evaluation, the questions were quite often quite difficult, and there was only 3 options I could select, so I felt like it was almost random what I was answering there, and the end result, if you look on the case description, there's 2 concepts, and it's quite difficult to tell which one is better based on the evaluation. So I don't know how much they actually rely on the evaluations when it's only 20 concepts. Maybe my guess is they don't really use the evaluations for decision making.
It may be a way to towards the sponsors to show, look, we have analyses very serious. Look at all this data we have.
Or for the crowd to make them feel important, like they participate in the decision making. And then what is a bit weird for me in this site is I don't really know how the concepts are implemented. The idea is they post everything there. It's sort of open source, so if you want, you can use any of the concepts posted there and put it in practice in your neighborhood, but I don't know how many people do it. Then you can report back on the site, but there's not that many reports on people putting them in practice. And for the sponsors, but I have no idea what they do with the results. So yeah, that was one thing I did. I sort of to get the idea of the description of process or what's going on the site. Then trying to move a bit towards finding the collective intelligence. First thing I did was I took this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this paper. I just used the framework to make a bit of a sense, like what kind of things are there going on. And this was really quick and easy. It was like maybe less than 10 minutes to make this one. Not really deep analysis in my my view, but what is it useful for is that it makes it clear what might be the interesting parts to look more deeper. So, for example, if I'm interested in crowd creating something, I could select only the phases where crowd is doing creation. So it a bit clarifies the stuff that's going on the site. So at this point I thought I'm ready to look at the intelligence. Intelligence is a really fuzzy concept to me, and collective intelligence too. So what actually is intelligence? So I decided I'll take many interpretations and try to compare what is going on the site to this. One viewpoint was this sort of like micro-level viewpoint, which was in an MIT study. Then for the macro level, I was trying to look if there's something like a wisdom of crowds going on the site. And for the level of emergence, I tried to throw all the stuff that was going on the site to some sort of complex adaptive systems or swarm intelligence framework. And then finally I tried to look from a point of view of artificial intelligence, if there's something that could be explained through that kind of approach. So if we first take a look at this MIT study, like I said, they did this study with something like 700 participants, and they found that if you have a group and you put it to do different kinds of tasks, there's correlation between how well the group performs in different tasks. And they found this collective intelligence factor C that seems to explain about 30 to 40% of variance in the group performance in different tasks. And these were live tasks where the people could discuss with each other, like normal people trying to solve a task together. What is interesting here is this factor they found is only slightly correlated with the intelligence of individuals, and much more correlated with how socially sensitive the people are towards each other's expressions and how equally the people are, or how equally the talking turns are distributed. And yeah, from this point of view, there probably is something going on the website. Here's a simple example that I found. This happened to me. This is from a phase when I was during the concepting phase, or actually during the applause phase, I was trying to improve the concept. And this is my original concept. Don't try to read it, it's too small. But, and this is the discussion that was, part of the discussion that was going on under the concept. It's like the website is organized so that there's a concept and underneath people can post comments. And here is the first comment. It's from a facilitator of the site. He's giving positive feedback. Really interesting take on using financial incentives, blah, blah, blah. Another user also giving positive feedback. Here I agree. And then she mentioned that this concept could be combined with a couple of other concepts. Here's me. I say thank you for your feedback. Do you have any suggestions which would be a good concept to combine with? And here's another user giving something like 4 suggestions, and yeah, these concepts might be useful. And then some more. You could also take a look at this. And then this post-it note thingy is actually after I took a look at the concept suggested and comparing, okay, this is how they might be connected, and then I made this little update based on this discussion. And I think that kind of thing might be something like good group performance. So yeah, that sort of intelligence as in group performance, that probably can be found on the site. But then again, I don't really see this really specific for crowdsourcing sites or these kind of approaches. I mean, the same could happen in a normal discussion. Now it's just in a web format. So it's really, I don't think this is nothing new, and I don't really know much about this kind of things because the psychologists have probably been looking for these kind of interactions for decades already. And, I don't really have anything new to say about that, but that normal human interaction kind of intelligence probably does exist there. Then moving on to another perspective, wisdom of crowds. So this is the idea here is if you have a big group making a guess on, let's say, number of marbles in a jar, the average of the many guesses is usually quite close to the real value. Or the crowd usually makes, when the evaluations are combined, makes a better guess than individuals in it. And research has shown that there's basically three conditions that should be there for a crowd to be in.
There is a fourth one, but I've never quite understood how the fourth one is
which
really different from the first, but the decentralization one.
Yeah.
Was, when I summarize it, I also summarize it with those three. The fourth one is superfluous. There was a fourth one.
Yeah, decentralized. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's also somehow related to independence.
Yeah, it's related to diversity and independence. It's not clear to me what it adds to those three.
Yeah. But yeah, diversity, it just means that the opinions should be different. So if you have all people thinking in the same way, they are probably making the mistakes the same direction, and the mistakes that don't cancel each other. Then you have to have some sort of aggregation mechanism, so you can combine the different evaluations. And last thing, people should be independent. So as social animals, people really easily are influenced by other people. So if I hear someone guessing 25, that will change my evaluation instantly. So I think people tend to think that other people know better, and they change their own opinions based on that. And there's actually all of this, how it works on OpenID. I found this screenshot quite useful to explain. First, if we look at the diversity, it's an open website, anyone can sign in. If we look at the names here, there's Haiyan Chang, Yusuf Chang, and Amy Bonsal. So it seems like the people are from different backgrounds, and at least in principle, anyone with an internet connection can participate. So I didn't make any analysis on the people, but it seems like the diversity of the people shouldn't be an issue here. So diversity probably is there. Although it seems like participants are biased to people with a design background. For the application, we can see it here. Then simply count how many people have seen a concept, how many people have commented, and how many applause the concept has had. Oh yeah, this is the button you can use to give applause. And they just count them together, and that's aggregation is just a sum. And for the independence, no. I can see what other people are thinking. They even have I can even organize the concepts on the page depending on, like, show first the ones that have most applause, most views, most comments. So independence is clearly violated, and there's even an experiment done which showed that even mild social influence. And in this experience, they only showed the average of other people's guesses. That was enough to ruin the wisdom of crowds on simple estimation tasks. So here,
there's this study where they used songs from unknown groups, and people had to say which ones they liked.
Sorry?
There was this study where they used songs of unknown groups, and people had to say which songs they liked, and in one condition they could see what the others had liked, and in the other condition they had to choose.
Yeah, I think I heard about it, but I didn't read it.
It's a classic study, and the result is...
Salganic or something.
Yeah, I don't remember. If people see what others have liked, they are much more inclined to like the same thing that the others have liked. Well, if you let them choose without knowing what the others have liked, they come to quite different distributions of what are the best songs.
Yeah, I think I heard about it. Like they used some sort of website for that.
Yeah.
Probably have to look it up. Then I also wanted to go a bit deeper and see how good decisions does the crowd actually make here. And so I take a look at this collective intelligence genome. Okay, I want to throw out everything where hierarchy does something. So these are the phases where crowd does something, and I'm most interested in places where crowd decides. So I basically have two options. Like I said, the evaluation, it's difficult to compare the decision of the crowd because there's you cannot get numerical values from the site. You only see the bars and the number of evaluations. But in an applause phase, that's actually doable. So it's what I did was this in the end of the applause phase. There's this shortlist selection where the experts of the site decide which concepts will go to the refinement and which will not. And for the data collection, I only have data on 3 challenges because the data has to be collected exactly when they are changing the phases, because I can still go and upload the old challenges. The views I make still count. So if I collect the data on how many uploads each concept has after the fact, there's also the ones that are accumulated during the later phases. They are in there, so that doesn't really tell anything afterwards. And this is how it looks like. Here are the concepts from one challenge that didn't make it to the shortlist, and here are the concepts that did make. Maybe 2 things to notice. Nothing is really normally distributed, or most of the things are not normally distributed, and that's pretty much end of my statistical skills. Another thing, it seems like the medians of concepts that ended up on a shortlist, they are a bit higher on all of them. But then I figured out that actually there's interesting natural experience.
What do you mean with frequency and views?
Yeah, this is like how many times the concept was viewed, and this is how many concepts are in that.
What in that category? Sorry, it's a distribution.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, the first ones look kind of like a power law. Most of them look like a power law, except this one below.
Yeah, that actually might be normal one. This.
It looks more normal, but the others look like a power law, which is kind of what you would expect.
Yeah. But then I figured out this you can actually do some sort of analysis or comparison, because they mentioned in the blog that when they select the shortlist, they read through everything. So they make a decision only after they have seen all the concepts. And it's usually something like 100 or 200 concepts, so it's doable for the group who makes the decision. So here is like a ranking of the concepts based on the opinions of the crowd. So here is the ones who got most views, comments and applause. The green one is applause. So this here got the most applause, this one the least. And here is the expert selection. So how to read this is here is the halfway mark. So you can, for example, take a look like if you only look at best. Let's say best 50 concepts as decided by the number of applause the crowd has given. How many concepts selected by the experts are in that group? So best 50, it's about something like 13 out of 20 in best 50. And if we compare all the 3, we can see that if you only take the best 50%, you get, depending on the challenge, something like 80% of the winning concepts in the best half. So they can, maybe so how I interpret this is that the crowd cannot really decide which are the best concepts, or at least the decision is not the same as what the experts make. But they can recognize which are the worst ones. So if for this decision makers here, they could save some time if they only read, let's say, the top 70% as decided by the crowd instead of all of them, and they would still probably have the same concepts in a shortlist.
Well, generally in collective intelligence studies they come to the conclusion that experts are not better than crowds. So if the experts selected them, it's, as I said, that these were the best.
Yeah, but on that I cannot really say anything. I don't know which, maybe they should have gone with the crowd selection, but I was thinking like from a perspective that if I'm running a challenge, could I use the crowd to help me in the decision? And here I'm assuming that what the expert selected is what the expert wanted and what should be the outcome, and can they save some work? And it seems like they could. Then for again another new perspective, I tried to look at maybe there's something like swarm intelligence going on at the site. I found this one paper by Juho on model design for simulations, and he has these some properties that should. If a system has these properties, we could call it a collective intelligence system. So there should be adaptivity. Some parts of the system should adapt to the changes in the environment. There should be some sort of interaction, some sort of rules. And there should be a distinction between the global level and local level, so you can figure out what is the emergence. There should be something emerging that is more than the sum of the parts in a simple level. There's usually elements of randomness and some sort of redundancy or information stored in many places of the system, and the system also should be robust. So even if some parts fail, the system should still stay functional. And if we compare OpenIDEA sites, this list of criteria, most of them are ECS. Because people can adapt their behavior, rules change from one phase to another, the system adapts to different challenges, different topics. There is interaction, quite lots of it. There are some sort of cultural rules. I even managed to make some sort of list of it. There is randomness. The list where you view the concepts, it shuffles them randomly every time you update the page. And there's, the information is in many places. It shared cultural rules, and data is probably stored on different computers and these kind of things. And the performance of the system does not depend solely on, even if some of the users didn't come back, the site would still be functional. But the two more difficult ones are the difference between global and local, and is there anything that we could call emergence? So let's take a better look at them. I tried to tackle the problem with emergence and global by making these comparisons. Here is what the user can do on the site. People can add their inspirations, they can add the concept in the phase. They can check out what the other people have been doing. They can upload. They can watch videos about where someone explains what is this challenge about. And this is actually quite interesting. If you see an interesting concept and that gives you an idea of something related, you can press that button so the site links the two concepts, the new concept you are creating and the one on which your concept is based. And then people can also comment. And then I tried to look at the global level, what is the output of the system in different phases. So one thing that's different from the local people that do stuff, the people do locally, is this lists of concepts and inspirations which are ordered based on the number of uploads or comments or views people have given. So it's the collective decision of how many uploads some concept should have. It's not something that you have on an individual level. So that might be something. I'm not exactly sure how to define emergence in this concept, but that might be one candidate. So these ordered lists. Another thing, there's feedback. There might be some feedback loops. I will describe one of them a bit later, created in this system. And finally, this build on this button, it helps to create this sort of collaboration map on the side, like showing how different concepts and integrations are related. And that's also something that's not on the local level. If you look at the feedback loops, this is how it might go. I made this quite quickly, but my guess at the moment is there might be this sort of feedback loops. The user makes a contribution, which might get the crowd interested. If the crowd is interested, the crowd may contribute to that concept, usually commenting, which increases the number of comments. And that also, again, increases the interest of the crowd because you can order the list based on the comments. And when it's on top, it's more likely that the crowd will see it. And then it's more likely that the crowd will contribute and the number of comments increases, and there might be this one feedback loop. Then the number of comments and the contribution of the crowd. Usually the comments are really positive, really encouraging. So those are positive feedback for the user who made the concept, which increases the interest of the user and increases the likelihood that the user might contribute. For example, there was in this challenge where I showed this my concept and the discussion in it, I made also another concept, but that didn't generate any interest, or not nearly that much, and I never went back working on it. But this other one, where people got interested in, I spent Sunday afternoon basically trying to make it better, just because of a bit of positive feedback. So there might indeed be this kind of positive feedback. But then just a couple of days ago I realized there might also be a negative feedback, because I found it sometimes really, really annoying on the site when people there was a long concept first and then this long discussion below it. So when there's more number of comments increases, it's more difficult for the new people to participate in it or understand what's going on. And that actually might decrease the interest of the crowd. So this might be how feedback loops work on the site. And then the collaboration map, basically it's a tool that allows you to see the connections between the different concepts. If you cannot see what it says there, it's as it should be. That's pretty much how it's on the site. If you zoom out enough to see what is the structure here, you cannot really see anything anymore. So I tried to use it many times, but I never figured out how to use it. So there is this emergent map, but I didn't really find it any useful. And if we compare to some other systems, like Wikipedia, I have to admit that this example of emergence on OpenID, I had a bit of force them, use a bit of imagination to come up with what might be emergence here. But for these examples of emergence on different sites like Wikipedia, it's easy to come up with them from the top of the head. People just make little contributions on Wikipedia, and there is this structured, huge database of knowledge where you can spend hours going from one to another in a really structured way. On Twitter, there is this implicit social networks formed by the connections people make to each other. There's the trending topics that emerge from the decisions of that people make, and then there is this image board called 4chan. I don't know if you are aware of it. No. And before you go to look at it, I have to give a warning. It's pretty disgusting most of the time, so beware. And there is a really, really strong feedback loops that.
It's a selection of images, or?
It's basically a website where people can post images and have a discussion. But what is interesting in the site, there's millions of posts every month, but the site only stores maybe, let's say, a couple of hundred of the most recent threads. And there is this one study where people were looking at this site and they analyzed data from 2 weeks and concluded that it has usually 15 pages of discussions, and a topic usually spends about 5 seconds on the front page. So if you don't see the topic on the front page on the first 5 seconds, it's gone further down to the forum. And a typical topic will stay on the forum at all, only less than 5 minutes, and then it's gone forever. So if there's...
I don't see quite the use of this site.
Well, it produces amazing amounts of these kind of pictures, like, or memes. So funny pictures on the internet, really many of them are originating from this site. And there's this really strong selection mechanism.
But how do they spread them if they disappear so quickly?
A thread can survive a longer time, but only if there's enough interest on the site and people are constantly making new posts on it. Or if the posting stops, it will be gone in a couple of minutes. And for some reason it attracts really many people, and really many funny pictures on the internet originate from this site. So there's some sort of creativity coming from this site. Yeah.
I don't know if there are some demographics on who's using it, because I've heard about it from my kids.
Yeah.
They love it, but
It's young.
I don't see that.
Probably we are.
And one thing about this site is most users are anonymous, so they don't. They found that 90% of the people who post on this site, they don't have any identifiers, so you don't know who posted any comment. But anyway, in these examples, I find it much easier to find examples of emergence than on the open idea. So then if you look at this...
Well, one thing I see as a difference with Wikipedia is that in Wikipedia, when an article grows, the positive feedback continues, because the larger the article becomes, the more probability that somebody somewhere sees something he could still add.
Yeah.
So, because the article is structured, it doesn't fire off people like with a long list of comments. It's unstructured, it fires you off.
Yeah. So in Wikipedia, there's a way to contribute more easily. You can, even if it's a really long content, really long article, you can still fix a typo there. And
And you can edit just one section. You don't need to read all of it to contribute.
Exactly. And so if you look at the open idea as a collective intelligence system, I put the yes on all of them, but the emergence is a bit, it's not very obvious, and I don't know how useful it is in this case. So
yeah, from your description it's indeed not obvious that there is emergence, which you would like exactly in such a collective